Volcarona has been a staple of the overused generation ever since its introduction in Generation 5, due to its very interesting stat spread, which, while very physically frail, gives it a lot of special attack, special defense, and speed, making it an exceedingly effective quiver dancer, giving it a place in the Scarlet Violet OU viability rankings of A rank as of time of recording. However, the weird thing is that if you go to the pre-evolution, which is Larvesta, its base stats are not especially offensive at all. It's just very, it's such a weird and jarring comparison that we have this very clear, well, this is a glass cannon, it's very especially offensive, and that's where it gets its niche. And then you go to the pre-evolution, and it's not that for whatever reason, but alright. So it should still be pretty offensive, right? It should still be good. It's B rank on the viability rankings, and it's just such an interesting Pokemon to really think about. And I want to go into why. So, why is Larvesta so strange compared to Volcarona? It's very odd. If we go to the team builder, what exactly do we have here? We have a glass tank, which is just a very funny thing to think about. So if we go to Volcarona, you can very clearly see that it's not very bulky, especially on the physical side. It's got 85 HP, 65 defense, 105 special defense. It's good on the special side, but not very much on the physical side. And also, if you look at its typing of Bug Fire, as everybody knows, this is a quadruple weakness to Rock, and everybody knows about the really good hazard Stealth Rock, which means that every time that you switch in, you get damage based on your weakness to Rock, which can do up to 50%, which Volcarona has. Larvesta has that too, but for some reason it's a tanky Pokemon that's meant to take hits. It's pretty funny. As we look at the stat spread, this is all really good by Little Cup standards. We have 55 HP, 55 defense, and 55 special defense. And also if you look at the BST... what am I doing there? If we look at the base stat totals, the highest that we have is Girafarig at 455. Go down a little bit more, we have Mudbray. Well, Larvesta is at nearly the cream of the crop when it comes to Little Cup stats. It's really good. Especially because it's got really good defensive stats, 55, 55, 55, quite bulky for the tier. It's also got a 60 speed tier, which is really nice, because it allows you to do quite a few things, but also just being quick enough that a lot of slower walls allows you to do things like U-turn out pretty fast, so that way you don't have to take the hit, go into something else, while still getting chip on your opponent. Always nice. But also you have base 85 attack. So for context, if we look at Pawniard, it's the same base attack, and Pawniard is fantastic. If we go back to the viability rankings, it's an A+ tier. It's really, really good. So why exactly would you want to run this as a defensive Pokemon when it's got such a great attack stat? The answer is the ability, the typing, as well as the support move pool. It's pretty interesting. You have the ability Flame Body, which means that you have a 30% chance of burning a Pokemon that makes contact with you. This was really valuable in last generation, where there's a whole bunch of fighting types running around, such as Meanfu and Timber, and you have a 30% chance to burn them on switch in, which was always nice. Just the very awkward part is the Rock's weakness, where you love switching into attacks exceedingly well because of how good your bulk is, but if Rocks are up, then you're kind of screwed, which is kind of funny. But you have Flare Blitz is really good stab that hits really hard even without investment. You have U-turn as a really good pivot move, so that way your opponent's always on the back foot. If they try to have a Pokemon to counter your Larvesta, you just U-turn out, go into your counter to that Pokemon, which we'll get into those in a sec, but it's just a really good utility to have U-turn on a defensive Pokemon. You also have Will-O-Wisp, so that way in case you want to burn something as it switches in, or your opponent doesn't want to risk having things set up. Like, if you don't want to have your specific Mon burned, you just switch out as opposed to chancing the Flame Body. So in that case, you can just use a manual Will-O-Wisp instead. And you also have Morning Sun, meaning that you have a reliable recovery that, although it's weather dependent, it's still really good. It can take hits really well as a result, and it's really hard to hit effectively on the physical side because of Flame Body and Will-O-Wisp. It's really nice overall. You also have the Scarf set, and I think the Scarf set's really got a lot of potential. And the reason for that is your speed stat gets up to 16 at level 5, which means that you outspeed a good majority of the metagame. Well, everything bar a couple of Scarfers. You have Scarf Ghastly. So, Ghastly. Choice Scarf, that'll be faster, but this is like the really edge case. This is so good because you can utilize your really good attack stat, your really good, fantastic stab combination of Flare Blitz and U-turn. And then you also have a really good support move pool, well, supporting move pool for your physical attacks. You have Body Slam. If you want to be cheeky with it, you can also run Leech Life as opposed to any of these coverage moves. You have Trailblaze, so you can run like an Eviolite set if you wanted to. But you can also run Terra Blast so that way you can get rid of your Rock's weakness, go into something else, and still have a really good coverage as well as stat time. So there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to Larvesta. And even though it's a choice Scarfer, it's still got enough defense on baseline that it can still be really effective in taking a few hits because of Flame Body. So your opponent, even though this may be a Scarf Pokemon, doesn't take it fantastically, it can still do a lot of progress and force your opponent into some really annoying situations. It's also got a new partner in Nimble, the John Dark Souls of Pokemon, and the reason why it's really important is because you can do bug spam things, and we'll get into why in a sec, but you can do bug spam things with Nimble and just put a lot of pressure on your opponent's resists to their bug type moves, to your bug type moves, as well as, oh well, I have two bug types with stab U-turn, so I can just go into the one counter that beats what the walls are trying to block, so it's all a-okay, so whatever. You also have Surskit. It's not really used with these, but it's worth mentioning that there's not a lot of bug types in Little Cup because of how weird the defensive typing is. Surskit is the only other one that really gets on the tier of these two, because it has access to Sticky Web, and Sticky Web is invaluable speed control, where you lower the speed of grounded foes by 1 on switch in, and it can turn games on their head really easily. But now that we have what exactly Larvesta is trying to do, what are you trying to hit? The good news is that you hit a lot, and a lot of important things at that. So if we go to the Viability Rings, we have Girafarig in S rank, we have Pawniard and Toadschool at A+ rank, we have Magnemite in A rank, we have Deerling in A- rank. You have a lot of things there that you really like crashing into. Most notably Girafarig. It's really hard to get a bad matchup versus Girafarig, because if it's running the Nasty Plot set, then it's like, oh, my Scarf set, I can just come in really fast, U-turn out, and that forces Girafarig to Terra, which means that you have more options to deal with it later on. And even if it's the physical set, then you take its attacks exceedingly well, possibly burn it in return, and make it much less useful over the course of the game. Toadschool likes rapid spinning off rocks, and you can take both Earth Power and Power Whip exceedingly well. It's really easy to get in on Toadschool when Toadschool is so good at just using Rapid Spin, getting rocks away, in addition to being a Girafarig check because of how good your special defense is naturally. It's pretty cool. It does have Spore, so you have to be careful around that, but you definitely have space on the Scarf set to run Sleep Talk. So if you want to, you can run Sleep Talk, come in, take the Spore, then use Sleep Talk, and then either pull Flare Blitz, U-turn, something else, and still get a lot of progress that way. Pawniard also hates seeing it because you can't really run rock coverage on it. You can. It's an option because you have stuff like... where is it? Do you not? Yeah, you got Rock Tomb. That's where it is. You can run Rock Tomb, but you much prefer Stealth Rock in order to punish Switch-ins. And even if it's like, oh, well, Iron Head or Brick Break into it, and then, well, then there's a problem there because then you could possibly get burned, and then also you have to face a Flare Blitz to the face. Not very good. Special mention in Magnemite because you're a faster Scarfer, so even if Magnemite wants to do things like lock into Thunderbolt or Terra Blast, it can also lock into Flash Cannon here if it wants to. But you just take it all so well that it's really hard for Magnemite to get too much progress. Also, once again, mentioning John Dark Souls, you take those attacks exceedingly well and can burn it in return, which can be really useful in opening up a lot of things, actually. Like Toadschool itself, Pawniard can really not really comfortably, but more comfortably set up stuff like Swords Dance. Take the hits from Nimble really well. Magnemite means that it doesn't have to worry about it as much. Girafarig having Nimble burned is really fantastic for it, especially if you're not running Protect on it. I mean, I very often run Protect just because of how good it is at scouting Terras, seeing what a choice Scarf Pokemon's going to go for, or otherwise just wasting a turn if your opponent's poisoned. It's really useful on it. But being able to not have to worry about Nimble anywhere near as much, like, oh, it's going to threaten with first impression, well, it's fine because it's burned and I'm already healthy enough and I've set up a whole bunch of stuff so it's all okay. That kind of stuff. Also, Deerling It deserves a mention because what Deerling really likes doing is Thunderwave Headbutt. So you use Thunderwave, you paralyze the target, it halves their speed, and it gives you a 25% chance that they do not move. And what Deerling does is that it also uses Headbutt, which has a 60% chance to make the target flinch as a result of its ability Serene Grace. So it'll attack into you a whole bunch, has a whole bunch of turns where it's sitting on the field, and it's going to flinch down your opponent. However, if you go into Larvesta, then it's really, really good because you don't really mind taking the Thunder Wave if you're on the bulky set, and you take Headbutts exceedingly well because of your physical defense, plus you threaten to burn on Deerling every single time it does it, and if at any point you get like a single Morning Sun, you've just reset a whole bunch of Deerling's progress, and it's really hard for it to come back afterwards. Really nice. Plus you have a U-turn threatening Deerling at all times as well, so even if it tries doing the para-flinch tactics, if you break through once, it's going to take a whole bunch of damage, and that's always really nice when this is just so annoying to deal with. That does beg the question of, well, these are all exceedingly high-level Pokemon, like S rank, A+ rank, A rank, A- rank. These are all exceedingly good matchups. So why is it only in B tier? And that's because it has a lot of roadblocks that it doesn't really like seeing at all. Glimmet was probably the biggest addition it has to be really wary of, due to the fact that it loves running Power Gem as Rock Stab as well as Stealth Rock, so you can't switch in as reliably. And actually, it probably is a good idea to mention this, but I think people would probably say, like, well, just run Heavy Duty Boots. It was a new item introduced in Generation 8. Just run Heavy Duty Boots. You don't have to worry about the Stealth Rock stat. The issue is that if you do that, then you're already giving up a lot in terms of bulk because you're not running Eviolite. So if we go to this Ghastly here and Eviolite, what Eviolite does is that it boosts your defense and special defense by 1.5 times, which is utterly invaluable for a tank or wall. So although losing to Stealth Rocks is really bad, you have countermeasures for it, such as Rapid Spinners, which we'll get into a bit, but having Heavy Duty Boots is just a lot of opportunity cost of, well, I'm losing bulk, and this is only conditional as well, because if there are no rocks up on the field, this is just a strictly worse Larvesta. So that's not really good at all. But back to Glimmet, it can set up Stealth Rock, it can threaten with Power Gem. It takes the attacks exceedingly well because it's Rock Poison typing, which means that you can't U-turn freely into it in order to get some chip damage because of the ability Toxic Debris, which means that Toxic Spikes are set up on the opposing side, which it limits your counterplay, and that can be really frustrating to deal with because you want to be able to go into your spinners, which we'll get into in a sec, but if Toxic Debris is up, then they slightly get worn down, and then also, this is not a sludge for power by any stretch of the imagination. 105 base special attack is absurd. So even though it's like, oh, it's a kind of defensive Pokemon because it's running Eviolite, and then you can even run something like this, it shouldn't hit me too hard. Nah, it's still got 18 even at one investment. Without investment, it's got 17. It's frankly ridiculous. It's even more than Abra, I'm pretty sure. It's crazy. But you can also run a Scarf set on Glimmet, Focus Sash Glimmet. There's a lot of Glimmet sets that you can run in order to set up hazards and be really annoying. So having it as an option is really good. Next up is Marianne. I can also put Toxic Spikes on here instead of Haze, specifically for this matchup, but Haze is also an option on Marianne, just to keep that out there. But Water Poison typing means that it resists your stab combination of U-turn and Flare Blitz. It has Regenerator, so that way you can get a whole bunch of HP back, and it also has Recover, so that way you can take your attacks well. It also threatens back with a pretty hard Surf, so overall it's really hard to break over Marianne, even if you do go into Wild Charge or Zen Headbutt. It does mean that it's really good setup fodder for stuff like Girafarig, or something just very passive. Obviously you can still run Haste for that, but if you manage to threaten it with a Trapper, such as Gothita or Diglett, then you're in a really good spot. Next up is Ghastly, and that's because it just takes the U-turns really well, and is faster. Plus, because it's a Ghost type, you can also do Spin Blocking. Rapid Spin is a 50 base power normal type move that removes hazards, so if you're a Ghost type, then you can just blank the hazards being removed. They don't get removed, and then it's really hard for Larvesta to pivot around it. I'm inserting Pawniard here just because all Stealth Rockers really you hate dealing with. Even though Pawniard is weak to it because of the Dark Steel typing and has a Fire weakness, as well as a neutrality to Bug, and is a physical attacker, meaning that it has a pretty bad matchup versus Larvesta, all things considered. Setting up Stealth Rocks at any point can really, really ruin Larvesta. even if it's something that Larvesta really likes beating into. Mudbray gets a special mention, not only because it has a Stealth Rock set, but also because the Rest Talk set is so annoying and you just give it free setup. And by setup, I mean stamina raises your defense by 1 stage after you're damaged. So it's really hard to break over when it's basically this unkillable physical wall that takes your stab combination really well because of how high its defense stat and HP stat are, and can be really threatening in return with Earthquake. It's hard to deal with. And you're thinking, oh, well, I'll just burn it with Flame Body or Will-O-Wisp. You can't, because what Rest does is that you sleep for 2 turns, and you restore HP and status. And while you're asleep, you can't have any other statuses, such as Burn. So it's really hard to deal with. Special mention also goes to Grievard, because it's a very physically defensive ghost type as a result of Fluffy, as well as being a ghost type, so it can spin block. And what do I mean by spinners? You actually got introduced into 2 really good ones recently, being Quaxley and Toadschool, which make really good partners for it, because both of them have a lot of utility outside of Rapid Spin, but are both really good Rapid Spinners in and of themselves. Quaxley has Roost, so that way it can keep itself healthy over the course of the game. Rapid Spin, so that way it gains the speed and removes hazards. As well as the ability Moxie, which means that if you ever KO an opponent's Pokemon, you get an attack raise, which means that you can be a really, really dangerous sweeper, despite the fact that you're a defensive Pokemon, because you have Liquidation, you have Brave Bird. If you want to, you can also run Encore. It all depends on how your team structure is. But as a result of this, you can be a really annoying to break over defensive Pokemon that has a lot of offensive capabilities. And it can be really, really good when paired with Larvesta because it takes all the grass-type attacks that Quaxley doesn't want to take. Next up, Toadschool. Earth Power is really good for threatening out the poisons, such as Mariony, such as Glimmet, that would otherwise really annoy you. You have Knockoff to weaken the enemy team, so that way stuff like Mariony, all the stuff that would otherwise block Larvesta or annoy Toadschool to some degree, you can break over. And then you also have Spore support, in addition to some other things, like you can run Power Whip if you wanted to, so that way you can threaten out waters that would otherwise annoy Larvesta. But you also have Spore to cause the target to fall asleep, which means that you can get in Larvesta pretty easily if it's against a sleeping target, that kind of stuff. So, like, these 2 being added really, really help out Larvesta, especially when it's got such a good positive matchup versus a large amount of the metagame. Just the very awkward issue is how to use it effectively. So this is from Little Cup Kickoff round semifinals. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because a Leonid is running Larvesta here, whereas Chimp is running basically anti-Larvesta stuff. It's double spinner, so you have Quaxley, and then you also have some really annoying mons in Grievard and Fuecoco. I didn't mention Fuecoco earlier because I don't think it's all that great on its own, but it's really hard for Larvesta to get much progress on when it's a fire type that's also really defensive. Also, Paldean Wooper is going to be able to set up rocks and other hazards really easily, and then if you try to spin him away, you can't because of Grievard. And just the reason why I'm bringing this up is just because even though it's like, oh, well, I'll lead with Larvesta, it's like, oh yeah, that does a lot of damage, but also Wooper sets up Stealth Rocks and it's really hard for Larvesta to do something afterwards. And even if you U-turn out, put a Giraffe Rig, oh, it can put on pressure on the opponent. Well, no, Fuecoco is just really bulky, and then it can roar you in, and then you get rid of half of Larvesta's health. It can be a really big liability as a result, even though its positives are so good. And if you're wondering, well, like, let's see the positives in action. This was me earlier today, where this is Little Cup Winter League, and this is such a fantastic matchup for Larvesta here. This is Scarf Larvesta, so that we have speed control, but I'm also running Nimble here, and one of the biggest reasons for that is that I'm going to put a lot of pressure on my opponent's Larvesta here, because that's the only bug resist on this team. It's a really good matchup for me. It's crazy. But it also just decimates the entire team because it's really hard for OJR here to get some rocks up. Like, he's probably on Shellos, based on, like, well, it's a defensive Pokemon, and one of the big things that it does is a really good rain matchup, as well as setting rocks. But I have Toadschool and Quaxley as spinners, and he doesn't have a ghost type. So I can just really freely, in the beginning, just lead off with my Scarf Larvesta, and then OJR is already on the back foot. What do you go into versus this? It probably would have been better if he let off Shellos, but like, what are you going to do versus a Scarf Larvesta. He has to switch out go to his own Larvesta, which takes quite a bit from that, even though it's a resisted hit, and you can't even get burned because I'm also a fire type. Then I can go into my own Glimmet, put a lot of pressure on this Larvesta. Well, I could Power Gem, I could Stealth Rocks, so that means that OJR has to go into Toad School here. I set up my rocks, and then I can get a really nice switch into Nimble, because this really needs to Rapid Spin because of how good Larvesta is on the attacking side. So you need to Rapid Spin here, and that gives me a free switch into Nimble. And then obviously he's going to play more defensively here, go to Larvesta, but then I just U-turn out, repeat the previous turn. This is what I meant by the U-turn core from earlier. It's just like, oh, well, I really like Nimble when it comes to bug spam, because how are they going to deal with this effectively when they don't have a lot of bug resist? So I just go in, go to Glimmet again, and then the sequence once again repeats. And then I go to Nimble again. And then instead of using U-turn here, I can just go and use Leech Life instead. And then bam, Larvesta is gone. And I think it's also showing like Larvesta is actually really good defensively, even though it's a Scarf Pokemon here. It took 3 hits. Now obviously they were resisted hits, and well, Nimble has Tinted Lens, so it doesn't really count. But the entire point is Larvesta just completely dominated this game, and it can be used both defensively and offensively, despite the fact it's a Scarf set. It's really crazy how good it was. And I think that's all I really have to say on the matter. It's kind of interesting how this very specially offensive Quiver Dancer that we know from Overuse is so notorious because everybody hates seeing it, because it can just like Quiver Dance once or twice and you lose the game. And then you have the baby version, and it's this really funny glass cannon where it's really good, but if you set up rocks it dies. It's really funny. Thank you all very much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you could like, share, and subscribe, that'd be great. And as always, have a good day.